This is definitely one of the most requested videos on the channel where I recommend you some short books, because whether you're a beginner or an avid reader, sometimes you're just done with the big fat books and you just want something short and sweet that still hits. So if you're one of the people that requested for it, or you're just looking for something short and nice, then this is the perfect video for you, because I have tons of recommendations. This is just part one of all of the recommendations, because there are like 30 to 40 books that I wanted to recommend. Making only one video is not a good idea, because you will be overwhelmed with the list. You won't know where to go, and I won't be able to talk enough about each of the books. So I have divided it in two parts. This is part one. Part two will come out very soon. As soon as it does, I will put the link in the description so you can go and check it out. For now, let's dive into the awesome short book recommendations I have for you. Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing very nice, and I'm sending a lot of hugs and positivity to all of you. Hi, if you're new, welcome to the channel. I really hope you enjoy the content, and if you do, please do consider subscribing. I am personally a big fat book reader. I personally prefer longer books because I feel like I get more time to connect with characters, and so I've always had my doubts about short books, because I'm like, how are you gonna build a story, an entire world, all of these characters in such a short book? And if I don't get enough time to connect with everything, how will I feel anything at all? Actually, I have read more books than I'm going to recommend, but these are the ones that hit. These are the good ones that within a short time grip your heart. Starting with a book that is my recent 6-star read, and 6-star reads are books that technically, objectively may not have all of the 5-star qualities, but the story sticks with me. The story satisfied me. I get connected to the characters and I cannot stop thinking about them. Sometimes I also can't wait to reread them because I'm so obsessed with them, and that just becomes easier with a short book. This is definitely a reread for me. I've not done it yet, but I am going to do it next week, because when I read it for the first time, I was so engrossed and present in the moment while reading it that I feel like I just did not get enough, and now I want to reread it and have all of those feelings again filling me. It's a unique story. It's also Japanese literature, so if you want to start with Japanese literature but you don't know where to start, I think this can be one of the perfect books, and it's very easy to read. So if you're a beginner, it's going to be perfect for you. The book is The Lantern of Lost Memories by Sanaka Hiragi. It's translated by Jesse Kirkwood. This is a unique story of a world that comes after you have died. So you die, and then instead of going straight to afterlife, there is a pause you take. You wake up in a photography room. You have tons and tons of photos from every day of your life, and you are supposed to pick out the photos that go into this magical lantern that then flashes your entire life in front of you. You know how when people have near-death experiences and they're like, oh my god, my entire life flashed in front of me? That is sort of the concept of this book, but it actually happens, and it's an entire process. I picked it up because I thought it was a cozy, nice, cute little book, and I was going to have a warm time, and it also started out like that. I was like, okay, I'm getting exactly what I thought I would, but as I went ahead, every chapter kept getting better, and I got way more than I signed up for, in a good way. This is a short book, but the characters stay with you forever. It's a very tightly knit book, so there's no word wasted. It's a deeply emotional book, so it satisfies that part of you, but also you get all of the answers that you're looking for. It is a well-rounded story, so it also satisfies your logical brain. After all of that warmth, we have a tragedy. The backdrop is World War II, and you can definitely read it as a beginner because it is very easy to read. It is told from the perspective of a child, and so it's very easy to get through, but there are so many complicated things that because we are looking at it from the perspective of a child, if you don't know the history of all the Nazi things, everything that was happening, it can be a little bit difficult to grasp, and it can be a little hard to connect with the characters. It is a short book, but not too short, and as I said, it's tragic. It's tragic to a point where when I was reading the book, I did not cry. I actually felt numb. The book is The Boy in Striped Pajamas by John Boyne. Only around 200 pages long, and even then it's so striking. It's a story of a little boy, Bruno, who loves adventures, and he wants to become an explorer when he grows up, and then he has to shift from his house because his father has been transferred somewhere else. Now over there he wants to explore, He wants to make new friends, so he sets out on a journey, and that's when he meets the boy in striped pajamas who actually shares his birth date. So that is where they connect, and then they start talking and you see what happens. It is literally haunting. So if you want a sad and haunting book, this is the perfect one. And even if you don't want to read the book, and I don't usually say this, but it does have a movie also, and the movie has done justice to the book. I was haunted by the movie too, and I actually cried when I was watching the movie because of how perfect it was. So you can also watch the movie, but read the book. It's crazy. Next we have a short and sweet, no, it's not sweet actually, it's very bitter. It has a melancholic vibe to it, and it is also a classic. It takes time to build up. Even if it is a short book, it actually felt like a long book to me because of so many things happening and because the pacing was so slow. Therefore I don't highly recommend it to beginners because you will get bored. I thought that it's a simple story and what could happen in such few pages, but it's divided in two parts. So the first part was still like, man, okay, what's going on, and the second part just brought everything down. Everything made sense, whatever was happening in the first part. I actually wanted to DNF the book after the first part, but because it is so short, I was like, okay fine, I'll just read more, and I read the second part and everything then made sense, and it boggled my mind. It made me question so many things. It's slightly philosophical if you let it be, and it shows you how your memory can actually completely alter your reality. Just because you don't remember something doesn't mean it didn't happen, and just because you remember something, that also doesn't mean that it actually happened, because sometimes you may remember the wrong thing, and when you're looking back at something, your memories may be altered a little bit without you knowing, because that is what you want to remember, that is what you wanted to be your reality. It's crazy, it's trippy. I really like this book. The book is The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes, which is also the winner of the Man Booker Prize in 2011. Look at that size. It's so short. It's also small like this, but it is so impactful. It's a story of two friends who you can classify as geeks. They're just having fun, and you see all of it from Tony's perspective, but something tragic happens, and then you're just like, oh my god, what happened? And then you fast forward in Tony's life, where Tony is looking at everything that happened from a different perspective, from the perspective of his memory. It's a very mundane day-to-day book because that is how you connect with the characters, and that is why whenever the tragic parts and whenever the sad parts and whenever the gut-hitting parts come, it's actually striking, because you're just reading this daily life and then it just hits you out of nowhere. If you're an avid reader and you're looking for a classic, then I think you can definitely start with this one. Next we have another short but not sweet at all classic. I read this book I think 2 years ago, and for some reason I have never talked about it. The reason is not lost on me. Actually, the reason is because it sort of fits nowhere, and I read it in one sitting. It is something that I think about a lot, but it is not a story at all. It's just the day-to-day life of a teenage boy going through a crisis. But when I did a little bit of research on it, I came to know that this is supposed to depict the mindset and the society of America at a certain point through the perspective of this teenager. The book I'm talking about is The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. It's a story of a teenage boy who runs from his house, and then you just see where he goes, what he does in a very slow-paced manner, and he is basically bored of everything, and he does not like anything that he sees. He can complain about any small to big thing, and you have to read all of that. So the character was quite insufferable for me because I was just like, get over it. But then on the other hand, after again I did a little bit of research and I looked at it from a different perspective, I also realized that maybe I don't know everything about this guy. I only got to see this slice of his life where he's doing something after he's run away from his house, but I don't know his past. I don't know about his mental health, and so now I do want to reread it. If you want a speculative read that when you read it you can make your own meaning out of it, then I do recommend this book. I don't recommend this one to be a first book or to read it as a beginner in the reading world, but if you want to start with classics, I think you can start with this one. God, talking about classics is hard for me because sometimes I don't really know what is going on in them. The next book is an interesting one. I love this book so much and I always think about it because it is literally a fever dream. Sometimes nothing about the story actually makes sense, and then sometimes everything just hits together and connects with each other. It is a simple story of a girl who's just reading a book all alone, and then she comes to know that there was this woman who was beaten up and she needs help. Meanwhile, her sister is in this deep sleep since 2 months and she has not moved at all. But as it hits 12 in the midnight on this particular day, a lot of things happen, weird things happen in all of these different lives, and you see them all come together and be like this mosaic painting where it's very different from each other, but when you look at it from far away, it's really beautiful. But it was not very weird for me because that is what I expect from this author. The book is After Dark by Murakami. Of course, it's Murakami. Murakami writes things that you cannot imagine and they don't really make a lot of sense when you're reading. It's more about the reading experience. If you want a short book by Murakami, I think you can start with this one. If you want a book from the magical realism genre, then I think this is perfect. You don't read it for the plot, you just read it for the vibe. Next up is one of my most favorite books ever, and it's a 6-star read. This one is like a character study, but there is a good amount of plot going on, so it's the perfect amalgamation. If you want to start with Korean literature, I think you can read this one because it's so easy to read, and even if you're a beginner, complete beginner in the reading world, I think you will really enjoy this book. The book is Armen by Won Pyong Son, which is the story of a boy who has a particular condition because of which he cannot feel or express his emotions at all, any feelings at all, and then he sees his mother and his grandmother die a violent death. He's literally seeing it, but he doesn't react to it because he can't. It's very simply written. It's a very ordinary style of writing. There's not much going on, but that is the beauty of it and the reason I enjoyed the book so much, because it's also very deeply emotional, and this ordinary writing style actually makes me appreciate ordinary things. This book makes me appreciate being ordinary and doing ordinary things, because sometimes we keep thinking that ordinary is not beautiful, but you don't realize just how extraordinary it is to have an ordinary life, because everybody doesn't have it. Even inside, it has a lot of space between lines. The text is big, so it takes very less amount of time to finish reading it, though I would suggest take your time, because I read it very quickly and then I had to reread it because I loved it so much. Great for beginners, great for teenagers. Actually, I have a lot of thriller recommendations that are very short to read, because thriller books are usually short, otherwise they wouldn't really be thrilling. But I have not included any of the thrillers in this video because I've already made so many thriller recommendations. So if you want a short thriller recommendation, I will link the thriller playlist in the description. You can go and check it out. Next, we have a cozy book which I am obsessed with. It looks a little thick, but most of it is not the book itself. Okay, it has excerpts from the second book, so don't be fooled by its size. It's a short and sweet book. It revolves around coffee. It is a standalone fantasy, and it's the perfect winter read. I read it as a winter read myself, and that experience has never left my mind. The book is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. High fantasy, low stakes, good company. This is the story of Wave, who has left her past behind because she does not want to be in the world of violence anymore, and she has moved on to another place where she wants to open a coffee shop. The only twist is that the place that she has gone to has no idea what coffee is, so they are all tasting coffee for the first time, and every single time I was seeing all of these people discover the bliss of coffee. I remembered how I discovered the bliss of coffee. So if you're a coffee lover, I think there will be this added romanticization for you in the book. But even if you're not and you're looking for a cozy fantasy, this is the perfect one. It's just around 250 pages, so you can definitely read it in one sitting. Though again, I recommend that in winters, whatever your favorite beverage is, even if it is not coffee, you wake up and you take your beverage and you read the book with it, because that experience is gold. The next book is actually lesser than 100 pages. Again, I just don't know how the author did it, but I am obsessed with this book. It's a 6-star read for me, and I am so connected to the characters within less than 100 pages. It's a story of a little 4-year-old boy who is growing up, but he doesn't really want to. And as he is growing up, he is seeing things from a different perspective. The book is Miss Ice Sandwich by Meiko Kawakami, translated by Louise Heal Kawai. It's called Miss Ice Sandwich because a little boy is very fascinated by this one woman who has blue eyes, and her eyes remind him of ice sandwich, and so he calls her Miss Ice Sandwich. It's adorable, it's beautiful, it's deeply emotional, it's so short to read. Whether you're a beginner, whether you are a teenager, it doesn't matter. Especially if you feel like you have grown up when you did not really want to, and you are not ready to cope with growing up. I think that feeling is encaptured beautifully in this book, and when you read this one, you will feel very validated. The next book is filled with philosophy and life lessons. Unfortunately, it's short. A lot of people already love it, and it's extremely popular. I cannot believe so much awesomeness is encaptured within this one little book. The book I'm talking about is Tuesdays with Mori by Mitch Albom. An old man, a young man, and life's greatest lessons. The old man is the young man's teacher, and he's about to die. So the young man visits him every Tuesday, and the old man gives him the wisdom from his life. If you are bored of reading self-help books, if you're bored of reading non-fiction books, but you still want good vibes, you still want life lessons, then this is the perfect book for you, especially because this book also feels very empathetic. It teaches you to be grateful. It helps you appreciate what you already have. Next up, I have another philosophical read for you that will help you with your purpose, but this also is a fiction book. It's so extremely short, and it's written in a beautiful poetic style because the author is a poet. The book is The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. If you want to start with classics, you can also start with this one. Just look at that. It's so short. The edition I have is also so pretty. It is a story of a prophet who lives on a particular island, and now he has to go back home. He has lived there for 12 years. So all of the people on the island tell him to give some words of wisdom to them that they can live by, and that is when our prophet says all of the things written in the book. The most beautiful part about all of these 28 essays is that it talks about very human day-to-day things, and not just emotional or mental things. It talks about eating, it talks about drinking, it talks about buying things, selling things, on beauty and on religion. All of that with a beauty of poetic writing style. I remember a lot of the book, shockingly, because sometimes when I read books like this that is teaching me stuff, I tend to forget them. I don't really apply them in my life, but this one was so impactful in such few pages, and I actually lived by some of these words. In the end, I have 5 books from one of the most popular Japanese literature fiction series ever, and it is definitely one of my favorite books because it has the cozy setting of a coffee shop. However, this one is not about coffee, and it is very cozy, but it also talks about very intense human topics. It goes heavy on the concept of regret. It helps you to relax, that helps you to feel like it's okay to be human. The series is the Before the Coffee Gets Cold series, and now we have a new book in this series, which is Before We Forget Kindness, which this is one... My books just fell. This is definitely my favorite title from this entire series because I am big on kindness. I think kindness is very, very important, and so this one attracts me the most. All of these books are really short, so if you want to start with Japanese fiction, or you're looking for a cozy series where you get into the world and then you have a lot of content to read, you can go ahead with this one. It will actually last you your entire winter season if you read slowly. And with that, we come towards the end of the video. This was part 1. The part 2 link will be in the description as soon as part 2 is up. I hope you got at least one book recommendation out of this one or the next part. If you enjoyed the video, please do like, share, subscribe. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Bye.